Добрый вечер, уважаемые зрители. 8-9 июля в Варшаве пройдет саммит НАТО. Генеральный секретарь НАТО Йенс Столтенберг уже заявил, что этот саммит станет ни много ни мало переломным, и руководство блока примет ключевые решения, цитирую, ключевые решения о том, как адаптироваться к новой ситуации в сфере безопасности, о том, что это за решения, как к ним адаптироваться, как они скажутся на политической ситуации в нашем регионе, нам сегодня расскажет политический советник миссии Соединенных Штатов Америки в НАТО Тамир Восер. Добрый вечер, господин Восер. И, естественно, первый вопрос: каковы цели и задачи саммита в Варшаве? Это поворот к новой холодной войне?
Thank you very much for having me this evening. No, this is not a turn to a new Cold War. This is about the fact that we find ourselves in a different security situation in Europe today than we had even 5-6 years ago. We face now a situation in which Russia's actions in Ukraine have caused great concern in the alliance and lead us to strengthen our defensive posture to ensure the security of our allies. But moreover, to our south, we see the threat from ISIS, the flow of migrants that come from the civil war in Syria, the instability in Libya. All of these things affect the security of all of our allies. And so Warsaw is going to be a summit that talks about how the 28 nations of the alliance respond to the security challenges that we all face, so that we face them together. The other thing that's very important is that it will be the first time that Montenegro joins the summit table, not as a full ally yet, as an observer, but we hope that within the next year and a half, we will complete all the processes for them to be full members of the alliance.
От каких факторов сегодня зависит безопасность Восточной Европы и стран Балтии? И какова роль НАТО вот в этом процессе?
So, the role of NATO in the Baltic states, as it is for any member, is to assure the collective defense of all of our members. The heart of NATO is Article 5 of the treaty, that an attack on one nation is an attack on all nations. What we said at Wales 2 years ago, following the events in Crimea, was that we would strengthen our ability to respond to an attack on any member. We would ensure that NATO was capable of responding quickly if there were any situations that required it. And so what we will be saying at Warsaw is that we have completed that work. We have completed our adaptation to make our forces more quickly deployable, more ready, more effective. And we're going to take that forward, particularly in strengthening our deterrence posture. NATO is at its heart a defensive alliance. We are taking steps that we are taking to ensure the security of our members from an attack wherever it may come from.
Сбудутся ли надежды балтийских правительств на размещение дополнительного контингента войск НАТО на их территориях? И, в общем-то, какую роль будут играть эти дополнительные войска? И, есть такое здоровое сомнение, что не станем ли мы в таком случае дополнительной мишенью для российских ракет?
So the first thing that the Baltic states are themselves doing for their own security is investing in themselves. We agreed at Wales that all of the countries of the alliance would aim to secure defense spending at the level of 2% of GDP within 10 years. And Latvia has been a leader in the alliance in this regard and is likely to reach that target as early as 2018. So that's the first thing, is that they are investing in themselves. We have had, since 2014, a persistent presence, a regular presence of alliance troops in the territory of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, and other countries for exercises, for training. And we look at Warsaw to enhance, as I said, our deterrence posture. That means that we probably are looking at additional NATO forces coming through on a rotational, regular basis in the region. We believe that those presents are fully in line with our commitments to Russia in the NATO-Russia Founding Act, which allows for rotational presence, which allows for exercises, but the point of these is it sends a clear message that the alliance is committed to the security of these countries. We are taking the actions that we are taking in response to what we have seen as a change in Russian behavior in recent years, and one that concerns us. And so we as an alliance are taking these steps as a logical but restrained response to the concerns that we have. There is nothing in this response that we are taking that should cause Russia to fear that it is a buildup of troops on its border or anything like that. We are taking a proportional, defensive, preparatory response.
Россия и НАТО, соотношение сил. Ну, каковы возможные сценарии развития вот этих взаимоотношений?
So, the alliance decided in 2014 that we would suspend practical cooperation with Russia. What does that mean? We had a number of activities where we worked together between NATO and Russia in political and in military areas, for example, in addressing Afghanistan, to look at the question of terrorism and so forth. We cannot continue those activities while Russia is in flagrant breach of international law with the illegal annexation of Crimea and its continued support to separatists in eastern Ukraine. But we also said at 2014 that we are open to political dialogue with Russia. We had in April a meeting of the NATO-Russia Council at the level of ambassadors. The Secretary General said last month that NATO remains open to another such meeting between now and the summit. The purpose of such a meeting is to keep the lines of communication open, to ensure that if there are questions from one side or the other, that they can be answered, to explain what we are doing in terms of the additional deployments of troops on a rotational basis that we have been doing throughout the area, to provide transparency on our exercise activities. And we very much hope that those meetings can serve as a forum where Russia reciprocates that transparency, that openness. NATO has been very clear. You can look on the NATO website and see the list of exercises that NATO is going to do in any given year. And we regularly invite observers to those. The Russian side has unfortunately not responded in kind, and we hope to maintain a political dialogue to increase the level of mutual understanding and transparency and to avoid any misunderstandings.
Вопрос к вам как бывшему сотруднику посольства Соединенных Штатов в Латвии. Как вы оцениваете степень воздействия такого понятия, как единство населения, как фактора именно национальной безопасности? Вот ситуация с русским меньшинством здесь, она не совсем однозначная. И достаточно ли делает наше правительство для того, чтобы вот такое единение нации произошло?
So, as I'm not serving here, I don't have the same depth of knowledge that I had 7 years ago when I left. But I will say that in the meetings I've had while I've been here, I was pleased to hear, for example, from the President's office on his commitment to addressing that question here in Latvia. More broadly throughout the alliance, the question of integration is an important one for all countries of the alliance. We have seen in Paris and in Brussels the tragic consequences of failing to fully integrate a society when people feel that they are not part of it. In my own country, we saw those consequences in San Bernardino. So this is something that all countries struggle with. And it is an issue where there is no easy solution or a simple set of checklists that if you do these 5 things, you will have an integrated society. It is an issue that societies must work on a regular basis, and it must be, there's no point where you will ever say, oh, we're totally done, no more work is left to happen, because there will always be new elements, new diversities that come into society that have to be integrated, and that is an ongoing process in any democracy. And that is what is at the heart of NATO, is our strength of our values, of our commitment to the inclusion of our populace in our decision making, to freedom of the press, to full engagement in our societies in a way that strengthens us as an alliance. And so it's something that we will continue, all of us, to work on together.
Новые вызовы, перед которыми стоят страны НАТО, вот эти волны миграции, конфликт в Сирии, борьба с ИГИЛ, ну, это новые какие-то очаги напряженности. Где еще в таком случае предстоит воевать латвийским солдатам?
So, if the first part I talked about the defense and deterrence aspects of this summit, the second aspect is NATO's role in projecting stability. And what we want to do there is try to keep the threats from developing before they before they show up on our borders. So, for example, we have our longstanding activities in Afghanistan, where we very much welcome the continued Latvian assistance to our efforts to train and develop the Afghan forces to take responsibility for their own countries. At Warsaw, we hope to see NATO's training mission in Iraq grow and move inside Iraq to train the soldiers there for the work that they are doing in fighting the threat from the so-called Islamic State. We also believe there's a role for NATO to play in supporting the coalition against ISIL. All NATO members, including Latvia, are part of that coalition. And we think that the alliance can bring some unique capabilities to bear for the operation of that coalition. But we're not talking about NATO joining the coalition. To Libya in the south, there are things that NATO can do to help the new government there strengthen its institutions, strengthen its defense capacities. But we can do that without having to deploy soldiers to fight in Libya. That is not the mission we are talking about. In the Mediterranean, the EU has a mission that's designed to counter the migration flows, as well as to help reduce the flow of arms in that region. We think that there are ways that NATO can support that mission and work together with the European Union on the challenge of hybrid warfare, which is something that can come from any direction. Again, another area where NATO and the EU can work together to share resources and ideas. I had a chance today to visit the NATO Strategic Communication Center here in Riga. They are doing very good work also on the question of Daesh, ISIL, and their messaging and propaganda and how that's worked. All of that are issues that NATO will be looking at the Warsaw Summit. So it will be a full and busy agenda.
Thank you very much for your time. У нас сегодня в студии был советник, политический советник миссии Соединенных Штатов Америки в НАТО Тамир Восер. До встречи, уважаемые зрители.